All right, buckle up, everybody, because today we're diving headfirst into the mystery of lost cities.
Lost cities.
Lost cities. We've got a list of the top 10 most intriguing ones scattered across the globe.
Sounds fascinating.
Oh, it is. We'll uncover what made these cities tick, why they were deserted, and what we can learn from their stories.
You know, these lost cities are more than just piles of rubble. They're like frozen moments in time, showing us civilizations at their best and worst.
It's like
Makes you think about how tough they were, how they adapted, that push and pull between human ambition and Mother Nature.
And you know what blows my mind?
What's that?
We're not just talking about some far-off exotic places. The number one city on our list, it was thriving right here in North America centuries before Columbus showed up.
Oh, you're talking about Cahokia.
Cahokia. It's like a forgotten chapter in American history right in our backyard.
Absolutely. Cahokia was massive, the biggest pre-Columbian city north of Mexico. It really flips the script on what we thought we knew about pre-Columbian North America.
I have to admit, I had no clue a city that big existed here before Europeans arrived. What was it like? Bustling markets, towering pyramids.
Well, not exactly pyramids, but they did have these huge earthen mounds, some over 100 feet tall.
Whoa, really?
Yeah, they built homes on top of them, temples, burial sites, you name it. Showed off their beliefs, how their society was structured. And they had plazas for gatherings, and their woodworking and pottery. Top-notch.
So advanced engineers and builders, but also a culture with its own beliefs and ways of doing things. But here's the big question. Around 1300 CE, Cahokia went poof, vanished. What happened?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Archaeologists are still scratching their heads.
Any leading theories?
Well, climate change might have been a factor. Changes in rainfall, long droughts that could have messed with their farming, leading to food shortages. You know how it goes.
But wait, wouldn't being near a major river help them through a drought? They'd have water, transportation, fertile soil.
True, but rivers can be a double-edged sword.
How so?
Well, yeah, you get the water and all, but it also makes you vulnerable to floods, changes in the river's flow, even competition with other settlements along the riverbank.
So maybe it wasn't one big catastrophe, but a bunch of smaller things piling up, some environmental, some social, maybe even political, that took Cahokia down.
Right. There are signs they might have chopped down too many trees, leading to deforestation and soil erosion, and there are hints of internal conflicts or political upheaval, which never helps.
It's like a historical whodunit, trying to piece together clues from centuries ago to understand what happened.
And it really makes you think, are we any better prepared for those kinds of challenges today?
Good point. Cahokia's story is a stark reminder that even advanced civilizations can be fragile. It makes you think about how we're dealing with climate change, sustainability, and all the complexities of modern life.
Absolutely.
Well, Cahokia is a perfect intro to our Lost Cities deep dive. It's a story about human resilience, adaptability, and the choices we make that shape our future.
And from the heartland of North America, let's jet off to the Andes Mountains, to Machu Picchu, the hidden Inca city.
Machu Picchu, the classic lost city, right? But what always gets me is that the Spanish conquistadors never found it. How did a city that incredible stay hidden for centuries? And does its isolation tell us anything about its fate?
Machu Picchu shows how ingenious the Inca were and how geography can change destiny.
I can't even imagine building something like that way up in the Andes.
It's perched high up there, hidden in those cloud forests, beautiful, but incredibly hard to get to. Even now, you have to trek through tough terrain or take that narrow gauge railway.
Those terraces they built into the mountainsides, the pictures are breathtaking. How'd they manage to create such a sophisticated agricultural system in that environment?
Those terraces were essential, not just pretty. They needed every inch of farmland they could get in the mountains. They show how deeply the Inca understood their environment, how they adapted. But that remoteness may have played a role in Machu Picchu's decline, too.
Really? How so?
Well, some theories suggest being so isolated made it hard to maintain trade routes and get resources, especially when the Inca Empire was facing pressure from the Spanish.
It makes you wonder, was Machu Picchu's strength also its weakness? That being isolated both protected it and ultimately led to its decline.
A fascinating thought. It speaks to something we see throughout history. That balance between being isolated and connected, between being self-sufficient and relying on others.
From the heights of the Andes, let's travel to a city frozen in time by a volcano, Pompeii, in the heart of the Roman Empire.
Pompeii is like a time capsule, isn't it?
It is. That eruption of Mount Vesuvius in 79 AD buried the city in ash, preserving it in such detail. It's like a window into everyday Roman life.
We can walk those streets, see the homes, shops, everything almost exactly as it was nearly 2,000 years ago. It's a powerful reminder that these were real places where people lived their lives.
It's both fascinating and eerie, isn't it? Do we have any idea how the people in Pompeii reacted to the eruption?
The archaeological evidence gives us a glimpse of the chaos. There are plaster casts of people frozen in their final moments. Some huddled together, others trying to run.
It must have been terrifying.
Imagine loaves of bread still in the ovens, meals left half-eaten on tables. Life just stopped.
Pompeii's story really makes you realize how precious and fragile life is, and how important it is to be prepared for the unexpected. Are we any more prepared for natural disasters today than they were back then?
That's a good question. We have science on our side, early warning systems, but we also live in a much more complex world. A major disaster could have a ripple effect across the globe.
From the volcanic ruins of Pompeii, we're heading to the jungles of Southeast Asia, to Angkor in Cambodia, a sprawling temple complex, lost and found, a place that sparks the imagination.
Angkor was the heart of the Khmer Empire, a civilization that thrived from the 9th to the 15th centuries.
And Angkor Wat, that main temple, I've heard it's the largest religious structure in the world.
It is. It's a stunning display of their architectural skills and artistry, a blend of Hindu and Buddhist symbolism.
So how did a city as grand as Angkor end up being swallowed by the jungle?
It was a gradual process that took centuries. Climate change may have played a role. Droughts could have disrupted their incredible water management system, crucial for their agriculture and daily life.
Their water management system. Tell me more.
The Khmer were masters of water. They built this intricate network of reservoirs, canals, moats, all to control the flow of water, to make sure they had enough for their crops in the city.
That's amazing.
It was. But even ingenious systems can be fragile when faced with prolonged droughts.
It makes you think about our own dependence on complex systems. What happens when those systems are disrupted?
A vital question. Lost cities remind us that even the most advanced societies rely on the natural world. Mess with that balance, and there can be serious consequences.
Well, from the jungles of Angkor, we're off to Petra, that city carved into the sandstone cliffs of Jordan. Petra has always fascinated me. I mean, carving an entire city into a cliff, that's ambition on another level.
It certainly is. Petra is a testament to human ingenuity and adaptation. The Nabateans who built it were masters of carving, engineering, and making the most of what they had in a harsh desert environment.
And I bet their water management skills were incredible.
Absolutely. They knew how to collect and channel rainwater, ensuring a reliable supply for their city. They turned scarcity into abundance.
Speaking of resource management, what about the Mayan city of Tikal, deep in the rainforests of Central America?
Tikal. A major Mayan city during their classic period. Pyramids, temples, palaces, the whole 9 yards. It was a center of power, religion, and culture.
I've heard theories about overpopulation and deforestation playing a role in the Mayan collapse. Is there any truth to that?
There's evidence suggesting it might have been a factor. The Mayans were skilled farmers, but their methods may not have been sustainable as the population grew. Deforestation and soil erosion could have strained their resources, making them vulnerable to droughts and other environmental problems.
Another cautionary tale. Even a civilization as advanced as the Maya faced ecological challenges that led to their decline.
It highlights the importance of sustainable practices for any civilization, no matter how technologically advanced.
Tikal is just one chapter in the long story of the Maya, but our journey continues. Next stop, Great Zimbabwe, that impressive stone city in southern Africa.
Great Zimbabwe flips the script on the traditional narratives about African history that we often get from a European perspective.
In what way?
Well, those massive stone enclosures and towers, they were built without mortar, just incredible stonework and construction techniques.
Amazing what they achieved without modern tools. What made Great Zimbabwe so significant?
It was a hub for trade and politics, flourishing from the 11th to the 15th centuries. But for a long time, European scholars didn't believe that indigenous Africans could have built it. They attributed it to, well, anyone but the people who actually live there.
It's a good reminder that biases can distort our understanding of history. Great Zimbabwe shows the importance of challenging Eurocentric narratives and recognizing the richness and complexity of human history.
Absolutely. History is often written by the winners, and it's up to us to seek out the stories that have been silenced or marginalized.
Well said. And speaking of challenging our assumptions, let's travel back to the Indus Valley civilization, to the ancient city of Mohenjo-Daro in present-day Pakistan.
Mohenjo-daro is incredibly old, over 4,000 years old. It was one of the largest cities of the Indus Valley Civilization, which was around at the same time as ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia.
Wow, so we're talking pyramids era. What do we know about their culture?
The Indus Valley Civilization was incredibly advanced for its time. Think sophisticated city planning, a complex drainage system, standardized weights and measures, even a written script that we haven't cracked yet.
A script we can't read. That's like having a whole library of knowledge locked away.
One of archaeology's biggest mysteries. Who knows what stories we'll find when we unlock it?
I can only imagine. But even without deciphering their script, Mohenjo-daro tells us a lot about their urban planning, their sanitation, their hygiene. They were ahead of their time.
Exactly. A well-preserved grid system for their streets, multi-story buildings, public baths. They created a functional and organized urban environment, which is impressive for a city over 4,000 years old.
Mohenjo-daro shows that innovation can be found anywhere in the world throughout history. It's a reminder to broaden our perspectives.
It really is.
From the ancient cities of the Indus Valley, let's move on to another Mayan city, Palenque in Mexico, known for its incredible carvings and hieroglyphs.
Ah, Palenque. A treasure trove of Mayan history and culture.
I've always been fascinated by Mayan hieroglyphs. They're like intricate puzzles waiting to be solved.
They are, and Palenque is full of them. While it's smaller than some other Mayan cities, it's known for its beautiful architecture and the details in its carvings. It's like a history book etched in stone, giving us a glimpse into Mayan beliefs, rituals, their dynasties.
And what about the tomb of Pakal the Great, one of Palenque's most famous rulers?
Pakal's tomb is a masterpiece. A pyramid-shaped structure with a temple on top. Inside, there's a massive sarcophagus lid that shows Pakal's journey into the underworld.
It sounds straight out of an Indiana Jones movie. The craftsmanship, the symbolism, it's amazing.
The Mayans were amazing storytellers, blending art, religion, and history in their carvings and hieroglyphs.
Palenque shows us that even within a single civilization, you can have incredible diversity in art, architecture, and political structures. And for our final stop on our whirlwind tour, we're traveling to Hattusa, the capital of the Hittite Empire.
Hattusa, the heart of the Hittite Empire, a major power in the ancient Near East from around 1600 to 1200 BCE.
A reminder that there are still so many stories out there waiting to be discovered.
The Hittites were a force to be reckoned with in the ancient world, and their city, Hattusa. It had imposing fortifications, temples, royal archives, with thousands of cuneiform tablets. They give us insights into their laws, their religion, their diplomacy.
It's amazing how these lost cities can transport us back in time, connect us with people who lived thousands of years ago. Makes you realize we're all part of something much bigger, a human story that spans centuries and continents. But as we've seen, even the most powerful empires can crumble. Even the greatest cities can be lost to time. So what connects these stories? What caused these cities to rise and fall? And what can we learn from their fates?
Now, those are the questions, aren't they? Yeah, those are the questions that have kept historians and archaeologists busy for, well, forever.
Yeah.
And as we've gone through these 10 lost cities, some patterns start to jump out, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. It's like these cities, even though they're worlds apart in terms of time and place, there's a common thread running through their stories. What do you see as some of the big connections?
One of the biggest things that stands out is the mix of environmental problems, social issues, and politics. It's rarely just one thing that brings a city down.
It's like a recipe for disaster, a bunch of ingredients coming together. So what kind of environmental factors were at play?
Well, climate change is a big one. We've seen evidence of super long droughts in places like Cahokia and Angkor.
And droughts can really mess things up.
They do. When the rain patterns change, agriculture takes a hit, and that leads to food shortages, instability, unrest, the whole shebang.
It's not just droughts, though, right?
Oh, no, not at all. You've got natural disasters like volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, floods. They've all played a part in shaping the fate of these cities. Pompeii, for example, buried under volcanic ash. And then there are the coastal cities that may have vanished beneath rising sea levels.
Nature can be pretty unforgiving. It makes you realize we're not just watching nature happen, we're part of it, and what we do has consequences. I wonder if deforestation, messing with the environment, if that made climate change worse for some of these cities.
That's a really good point. When you cut down forests, you get soil erosion, less rainfall, higher temperatures. It's a downward spiral that makes a region more vulnerable to droughts and other environmental issues. And it's not just the climate either. Overfishing, depleting mineral resources, all those things can lead to economic decline and social unrest.
So it's not just external forces at work. The choices people made, their actions, they all played a part too. It's like we have the power to shape things, but also the responsibility that comes with it.
That's exactly it. And that brings us to the social and political stuff, the things that can make a city stronger or weaker: internal conflicts, political instability, corruption, changes in leadership. All that can throw a city off balance, make it harder to deal with problems like climate change or resource scarcity.
One problem leads to another, and eventually the whole system starts to crack. Do you think there are lessons we can learn from these lost cities? Things that might help us tackle those same problems today?
I think there's a lot we can learn. One of the big ones is adaptability, resilience. The cities that thrived for centuries, they were the ones that could roll with the punches, adapt to changing climates, new trade routes, new leaders. They were innovative, learned from their mistakes, and built systems that could weather the storms.
So it's not just about building walls to keep things out. It's about building systems that can adapt and a culture that embraces innovation and resilience.
Exactly. Another big takeaway is sustainable resource management. The cities that used up all their resources, whether it was forests, fish, or water, they often ended up paying the price later on. Droughts, famine, conflict, they all came knocking. And eventually their civilizations crumbled.
It's like a reminder that we're not just living for today. We have a responsibility to future generations to use resources wisely and make choices that ensure a sustainable future.
Absolutely. And I think another crucial lesson is the interconnectedness of everything. What happens in one part of the world can have ripple effects across continents. The rise and fall of these cities, it wasn't just about what happened in their own backyard. They were influenced by trade networks, migration, political alliances that stretched across vast distances.
So we're all connected, part of a global community, and what we do has consequences that reach far beyond our own borders.
Precisely. And that highlights how important it is to cooperate, to talk to each other, to find solutions that benefit everyone when it comes to global challenges. Whether it's climate change, pandemics, economic turmoil, we need to work together.
It's easy to think of these lost cities as just stories from a long time ago. But what we've been talking about, it's relevant to our lives today.
It is. Their stories remind us that civilizations, no matter how powerful, are not invincible. They're complex systems that can be brought down by outside forces and internal weaknesses.
But they're also inspiring, wouldn't you say? They show us what humans can achieve when we work together, when we create, innovate, and build something bigger than ourselves.
They really do. They remind us of the human spirit, our ability to adapt, to overcome challenges, and to leave a lasting legacy.
Well, we've explored 10 lost cities, each unique yet connected by these common themes. As we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I'm left with a sense of awe, wonder, and a bit of sadness. What do you think their legacy is? What can we learn from their silence?
Yeah, it's definitely bittersweet, isn't it? These places were once bustling with life, and now they're silent, overtaken by nature, or buried underground. It makes you wonder, what stories could they tell if those walls could talk?
It is a profound silence. But that doesn't mean their stories are lost forever.
Right.
We can still listen, just in different ways.
I like that.
Through archaeology, history, art, even through stories passed down for generations, we can start to put the pieces back together, understand the challenges they faced, and celebrate what they accomplished. It's like we're solving a giant historical puzzle. Each new discovery fills in another piece of the picture.
Exactly. And each piece helps us honor the legacy of these lost cities and the people who built them. It's a way to connect with the past, to see ourselves as part of a much bigger human story.
You know what strikes me? It's almost poetic that so many of these cities were eventually reclaimed by nature.
How so?
Well, like Tikal, enveloped by the jungle, Petra, fading back into the desert sands, Cahokia, resting beneath the earth. It's almost like a reminder from nature that we're just a part of this larger ecosystem, and what we build, no matter how impressive, is ultimately temporary.
It's a beautiful way to look at it. Nature has a way of reminding us about the cycles of life. What we build today will eventually crumble, and maybe those ruins will give rise to something new, a new chapter in the story.
I like that. Even in loss and decay, there's renewal, a continuation. But there's also a warning there, right?
A warning.
Yeah, that even these powerful civilizations ultimately fell apart, vanished. We've talked about how environmental damage, social problems, political instability, how all of that contributed to their downfall. Do you think we're headed for the same fate? Are we destined to repeat those mistakes?
Well, I'm an optimist. I believe we can learn from the past. We can make choices that create a better future, a more sustainable and just world. We have the knowledge, the technology, and we're connected in ways that these ancient civilizations could only dream of.
But it takes effort, doesn't it?
It does. We have to be willing to change how we do things, to commit to working together.
It sounds like we're at a turning point.
We are. We can choose to ignore the lessons of the past and risk heading down that same path, or we can choose a different direction. One that focuses on sustainability, cooperation, the well-being of everyone and the planet.
So these lost cities, they're not just cautionary tales.
No, they can be sources of inspiration too. They show us just how resilient and inventive humans are, how we can adapt to tough environments, and how we can create beauty and order in the world.
What do you hope our listeners will take away from this deep dive into these lost cities?
I hope they'll come away with a sense of wonder and curiosity about the past, but also a renewed sense of responsibility for the present and the future. These lost cities, they're not just remnants of a bygone era. They're reflections of our own challenges and possibilities. They remind us that we're part of a much bigger human story, and that our choices, they really matter. We can learn from the past, build on what came before us, and create a world that's both awe-inspiring and built to last.
Well said. And for anyone who wants to explore these lost cities further, we'll have links to resources in the show notes.
There are tons of great books, documentaries, museums, even virtual tours that can bring these ancient civilizations to life.
It's a journey worth taking. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the fascinating world of lost cities. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and never lose that spirit of discovery.